Hello, I'm Claire, the Oily Witch, and welcome to my webinar on managing menopause naturally. I'm just going to share my screen with you now. Bear with me. And if you've got any questions, then get back to me with the contact details at the end of this webinar. So, hail and welcome. You're in the right place if you're experiencing perimenopausal symptoms. And that could be just suspecting that you're in menopause. And quite often, when we are in perimenopause, we know on some level that we're in perimenopause. It's just something within us. And we think, is it that? And quite often we'll try and dismiss it because who wants to go, oh, I'm in menopause, especially if you feel quite young. You might be in menopause, and this is the webinar for you, or your periods have ended, but your menopausal symptoms have continued. That's a mysterious one. Or you're about to go through medical menopause. So you're making a decision about whether you're going to have an ovectomy or you're going to have a hysterectomy, and you want to know how to make that process and make the best of that change, and whether it as painlessly and as positively as you possibly can. And finally, if you want to make the most of this third and final stage of your life, because this is it, folks, this is the final third part of your life, and this is the time for owning your power and growing into yourself and making no more excuses. So what am I going to cover? I'm going to give us a definition of menopause. I'm going to talk about what menopause feels like. I'm going to talk about the disadvantages of living through menopause. I'm going to talk about possible symptom triggers. I'm going to talk about the menopausal myth. And then I'm going to tell you about my unique treatment method and why you don't already know this. I promise by the end of this webinar, you will have a better understanding of your menopause and see this transition as an opportunity, not a death of the self. So what's the definition of menopause? Menopause is the time in a woman's life when her ovaries stop producing hormones and bring her periods to a standstill. Generally, you're classed as being in menopause when your periods have stopped for more than 12 months. Obviously, if you have a medical menopause, they will stop overnight, and you can be in perimenopause and experiencing symptoms for up to 10 years. Everybody is unique and different, and therefore saying that, your periods have to have stopped for more than 12 months, you might know that you're in menopause when they stop for 3 months. You know your body better than anybody else, or your body knows what it's doing 9 times out of 10. So it's just a case of checking in with it. But you will feel that this resonates. So which of these statements is true for you? I think I may be starting my menopause. I'm definitely menopausal. My periods ended ages ago, but I still have menopausal symptoms. So one of those 3 options. What does menopause feel like? Isn't it joyful? So we can have hot flushes, or flashes, as some people like to call them, which literally feel like they come out of nowhere. And one minute you're fine, the next minute you're sweating, you're red in the face, and you feel like you're on fire. And these will be in varying degrees of hot flush, like some can be really bad and some are just minor. Sometimes you'll find they strike you in the middle of the night, so you wake up absolutely soaking, which is horrible because then you've been warm and wet and then cold and wet. It's just, and sometimes you think you've wet yourself. I've had that experience before. I mean, it's just really awful, the hot flushes. And when you're having them in kind of front of people as well, you're just like, oh my God, I'm going to have a hot flush. And that in itself can bring on anxiety about having a hot flush, which can bring one on. You can't think straight. You have memory loss, and thinking straight and memory loss is like, you can't remember how to spell certain words, or the word was there and you were about to say it and then it's gone. It's evaporated into thin air, and you're thinking, oh my goodness, I cannot remember what I was just about to say. And those situations are the worst, when you're either socializing, you're at work and everyone's looking at you and you're like, oh my goodness, what was it? And it literally has left the building and may return at a later stage, but maybe lost to the ether forever. Thinking straight is kind of like overwhelmed, kind of can't juggle as many balls as you previously could. You're aging, so you feel really old. You get that kind of, oh, I feel really old and decrepit. That's not very nice either. Your bones feel frail. Your skin feels incredibly dry. Everything feels dry. And you're just, yeah, withering. And that with it brings devastation. Some people feel a complete and utter devastation at the loss of their ability to procreate, I'd like to say, to have babies. That loss of, they feel a loss of femininity, that having going through this final stage sees them no longer being women. So there can be, that's what I meant about the death statement earlier, mourning a death of thyself. And it certainly is the mourning, the passing of the mother phase of your life as we enter the crone phase. This can lead to anxiety, depression. I mean, anxiety came on for me in spades with menopause. It wasn't something I particularly suffered from before, but in menopause, suddenly I could worry about absolutely anything and everything and wake up in the middle of the night. So sleep problems is another big problem. As I said, waking in the middle of the night, so you can go to sleep okay, but you can't stay asleep. And then your mind starts whirring at 2 a.m. and you're like, what does this mean? And it's just awful. Putting on weight. Suddenly you're eating the same things, but suddenly it's going nowhere. And you start feeling like you're barreling around the waist. And it's just like, what's going on? My clothes don't fit me. So I feel old, dry, and fat. It's just, depressing, isn't it? Irritable. Everybody annoys you. You don't have patience left. You just feel like literally your children. I had young children. That was really difficult, balancing them and me at the same time, when I felt quite childlike as well. Like I just wanted to have temper tantrums all over the place. And so that also spreads sometimes to your relationships with your friends and with your partner and with your family. You can't put up with stuff anymore. It's like a wall. You're like, I just can't do it anymore, or your patience has evaporated. It feels really unfair. It's like, why do I have to go through this? Goodness me, first of all, I had periods for all those years. Then I was the one that had to carry the children. And now I've got to go through this. It's like, why do I have to keep having these cycles of change? It's really obvious. So you feel like everybody knows what's happening to your body. It's like your body, especially in a work environment, gives you away without you sharing that information. And in the modern workplace, there doesn't feel like there's much place or necessarily understanding of what happens, and that confusion, the tiredness, the kind of overwhelm that can happen. How do you manage that? It's incredibly uncomfortable. Well, it can be incredibly uncomfortable. And that kind of, all those symptoms feed into one another. And it might be that you have one, it might be that you have the whole list. It will depend on what is going on in your body. And what can feel like something and nothing to one person can be utterly devastating to another. Again, it's entirely personal. So the big question I have to ask you is, do you want to live like this any longer? Do you want to end all this suffering? Do you want to turn your experience into something positive and enlightening? If you've answered yes to those things, or any of those questions, then you're in the right place. These are the disadvantages of menopause. You feel like you've lost your mind. So there's a kind of, it feels like you just can't, you're not as quick as you were. So that's difficult. So that plays onto your self-esteem. It starts making you feel less than worthy, less than yourself. So that's when you start to get low and start picking yourself apart. There's not being able to rely on your body. You don't know what it's going to do next. Are we suddenly going to have a hot flash? Am I going to suddenly wet myself? Am I going to suddenly have a migraine? What's going to happen next? Oh, I don't know what to feed you anymore. You've completely kind of barreling on. Oh, I expect you to recover from that injury an awful lot quicker than you did. What's going on there? Why have I suddenly sprained this? Why does it feel like the wheels are falling off the bus? You don't feel like yourself anymore. You're like, I've lost the essence of me. I used to be able to do all these wonderful things, and now I can't do them. Can't juggle as many balls as you could, as I mentioned before. It's like, you're used to, as mothers, as women, as wives, partners, we're used to keeping all these balls in the air, all these people or animals or life forms we're responsible for, or responsibilities we hold. And then suddenly you're dropping the balls all over the place. So it feels really like ungrounded and unsafe. It's embarrassing. It's like, oh God, I don't want this attention. I don't feel attractive anymore. I feel dry and everyone's looking at me, and now I'm sweating and I'm red and I just want to get out of here. And it can stop you actually wanting to socialize or be out in public because you don't know what's happening next. The incompetency at work, just thinking, am I going to be able to make this pitch or do this presentation? By this time in your life, you've probably climbed the ladder of success, if indeed you haven't started again, which can come out of menopause, your new beginning. And so suddenly there you are, you've got all this responsibility and power and, you know, ability, and it's just, where's it all gone? You know, as you gaze aimlessly thinking, what was I doing 5 seconds ago? Or who was I supposed to ring? Or where have I put that report? Where did I file it? Or making crazy mistakes on the computer and thinking, I've just eradicated or erased all that information I needed permanently. I mean, it, you know, it's just, the incompetency is just astounding at times. Feeling clumsy, feeling old, feeling fat, hating everyone. You know, it might not be as strong as hate. Mine was, because it was medical menopause, and also I don't tend to hang around in kind of, what was I going to say, in pale emotion. I seem to be kind of all there in primary color, not pastel. I don't do pastel emotions. It's all kind of vivid. And gone off sex. So you can find that you just don't feel sexy anymore because you're feeling fat, aged, dry, irritated. You don't really want to have sex with anybody, and you don't want anyone having sex with you. And yeah, it's just an almighty, gooey, sweaty, hairy. I haven't talked about hair. You can become more hirsute, or you can lose your hair. You know, your hair starts to thin and you're like, oh my God, especially if your attractiveness is like reliant on luxurious locks, or if you suddenly develop a tash or a beard. I mean, I've got a slight tash here and I don't know what to do about it. I do kind of have an idea what I need to do about it, but if I start doing something, is it just going to get thicker and thicker and thicker? And when I'm an old lady and I can't be bothered to wax anymore, am I going to be sitting there with a dark tash on my face? I mean, why I should care about that when I'm an old lady? I probably won't care about that, will I? But, you know, those irrational thoughts go through your mind and everything feels like it's upside down. It's a bit Alice in Wonderland. Now, there is a myth around menopause, and that is that you are expected to feel these things. So if you're in menopause, you should feel tired. You can expect to have hot flushes. You can expect to be irritable. You can expect to put weight on, expect anxiety, expect migraines, expect to feel old and useless. You are. It's just your hormones. That is a myth. Yes, you will experience some of these things, if not all of these things. However, they are your body's message to you that something needs to change. And my job is working out where you need to make those changes and helping you to see them, then guiding you through them. Possible triggers I will be looking at is your diet. Does it need changing? Are you eating the wrong things? Did you have an allergy when you were young that you thought you got over, or an intolerance that you suddenly have developed again? Let's look at that. Exercise. Are you running so far from yourself that you're damaging your knees, your hips, and everything else, your lower back? There are better ways to exercise when you're in menopause. You've got to exercise to reflect the amount of hormones you have in your body. So you have to start tailoring what you do. And you might find, if you have ovarian fatigue, that lots of like high intensity exercise is no longer suitable for you. But don't worry, I help you work that out, your hormone type and what kind of exercise is actually going to work for you and bring you the results. Because that's the thing, if you get that exercise wrong, you can continue to put on weight, or you can be stuck at this size thinking, hang on a minute, I feel like I'm eating all the right things, I'm doing all these things and I can't seem to lose weight. What is going on? I will show you how. Stress. big trigger when you're in menopause. So if that's even just the stress of getting things wrong at work, or the stress you're giving yourself, or the stress you get from your relationship because it has to change while you go through this change, stress, it's poison to the woman in menopause. And so you have to start thinking about ways in which to manage and reduce your stress. And that can be diet and exercise. Toxin intake. This could simply just be wine. It could be stronger things, whatever your poison. You've reached a point where you probably can't have your poison any longer. And that might also be caffeine. And I know I've had lots of people say, I can't give up caffeine. It's the most important thing in the world. It gets me through my daily cup of coffee. It's just non-negotiable. And then have had to make that transition and gone, oh my goodness, what a change. So you have to be open with this to going, there are changes I need to make if you are going to live through this in a positive, enlightened way. Soul realignment. So you might be feeling trapped. Menopause is the point in your life where you go, I don't want to do this anymore. And it could be your job. It could be the house you live in. It could be the relationship you're in. You just reach a point where your soul just goes, I'm sorry, we haven't got much time left. We're going to have to do things differently. And so that kind of misalignment, you're on the wrong path. No longer can you just lose it in the backdrop of your life. It's there and it's in your face. And then there's spiritual awakening. So this phase of a woman's life will often see her developing a much more spiritual self. And that's incredibly rewarding and fills the void of that your ovaries have left or your children have left. You know, that I'm talking about your younger children. You never get rid of your children, do you? Or their needs for you. So there is hope at the end of the tunnel. There really is. My cat is desperately trying to get in. I'm just going to let my cat in. My cat rules my life. Come on. That was particularly annoying. Particularly bad timing. So there is hope. So what we can look at, or what you need to look at, is natural symptom management. And that's what I will be looking at with you. It's like, what can we do naturally that is going to help your symptoms and make them go away? There is hope. You can regain control. With the work that we will do together, I will show you how to take charge and become self-centered in a positive way, so that you become the shining beacon, the ray of hope and light, the center of your own life that everybody else looks to and marvels at, goes, wow, look at her. Make positive changes. So things that may feel like I talked about caffeine, or other things like changing away from wine and finding something else to make to relax, is incredibly empowering, because it shows that not only can you continue to learn, you can continue to grow. Wear your wisdom with pride. Now this speaks to kind of hair color, not just hair color, but every single gray hair on your head you have earned. And instead of washing them or coloring them away and pretending they don't exist, there is something to be said with embracing them and wearing that experience with pride. They do in Mexico. They leave their hair white and they wear white, and they're like, I have, you know, I'm a being of light, I'm a being of wisdom. We have a really bad relationship with aging in this country. We see it as unattractive. We must do everything we can to prevent it from occurring. We don't see ourselves becoming richer, more interesting beings, but that is in fact how we are, like fine wine, people, like fine wine. Developing your spiritual self for full integration. So if you've got your mind sorted, so you're doing what you want to do, you're living where you want to live, you've got great relationships with your friends and family, you're working how you want to work, you've got all of those 3D, like those things sorted, right? but you don't have a spiritual side. So well-being is not complete. So that's what I mean by that. You need all three parts, mind, body, and soul, to align for full integration, to fully become you. And that is how you achieve holistic wellness and just become a total embodiment of health and well-being and satisfaction and joy and happiness. Happiness isn't a destination, it's part of the ride. So who am I to be speaking these things and to be telling you I can help you? Well, I'm a green witch, which traditionally means I'm a medicine healer using plants, essential oils. I believe all of the secrets to health and well-being reside in Mother Nature and within ourselves actually as well. And I'm a qualified aromatherapist. I'm a birth and medical astrologer. So I read your birth charts. I can interpret those. I work with herbs, so teas and just all different kinds of plant medicine. I am trained in nutrition, so I know about diet. I know about vitamins and supplementation, because I believe that the modern diet that most of us have access to, this is not people growing their own food or buying from gorgeous farm shops. This is people that are having to shop in the supermarket for convenience or for value, and them not getting the quality of food because of the way in which food is harvested and grown. The soil is knackered in this country, and the farming processes are not beneficial to the plants themselves to get the best out of them. And then don't let's overlook the pollution. I've been through menopause. I went through medical menopause, as I've already mentioned. I went through medical menopause in 2017 on 31st of October, Halloween, the Day of the Dead. So yeah, which is New Year, not the best timing, but there it is. And I had a difficult time. They screwed up the operation, and also they wouldn't let me have my ovaries taken out, which is what I wanted at the same time. I wanted a full hysterectomy. I had a vaginal hysterectomy, and I had to have my ovaries taken a year later. I found that the doctors didn't listen to me. It took me years to get this organized, and actually it was one of the best things I ever did, because I had a terrible time with my periods, and they were so super debilitating and painful. And now I no longer have that. And I probably did the whole menopause joyride in a couple of years, and I did it naturally. I do take HRT. I have to, because I went so early, because I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which means connectivity issues, and my joints are really vulnerable because my ligaments are lax. So I can't afford not to take that. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't take it either. So when I'm talking about natural remedies, I'm not saying you have to, completely avoid HRT. I'm just going to show you and tell you, once I've looked at you, exactly what you can do naturally and where you can kind of make things easier for yourself and a lot more comfortable. And I'm a mother, obviously. So these are my 6 stage steps to getting through menopause naturally, and how I think it's important you should be looked at, your health and well-being, and evaluated. So a health and well-being survey will see taken into account the 12 different body systems, including mental health and spiritual health, and look at everything that's going on, every part of your diet, your exercise, your familial history, your history, allergy, just everything will come from that. Then we've got the birth and medical chart analysis, and this is looking at the blueprint you were given when you were born and telling us exactly what propensities you had and how things were going to turn out for you. And it's like genes, so certain things get switched on by the environment in which you grow up, but they're there anyway in the background and can be switched on or switched off. So it's like getting all of that information. Then there's the one-to-one consultation. I spend 2 to 3 hours with you, and that's incredibly in depth. Now that can be split into 3 separate hours, whichever. But the important point is it's that focus, it's that concentration, it's a gathering of all that information. So all of the facts are there to be able to conclude who exactly you are and what it will take to get you well. essential oil analysis. Essential oils are really powerful in menopause. They can prevent hot sweats, they can calm hot sweats, they can help improve memory loss, they can help improve senses and feelings of well-being, manage anxiety, manage depression, help with weight loss, migraines. There pretty much isn't anything, dry skin, that they cannot have a massive impact on. So we do some essential oil analysis, and that gives more information about you, what herbs and plants work well with you, where you're at, because they also are divided into, you know, the different emotions, physicality, elements, etc. Then a personal prescription. So you get a report, 8-page report on everything that is found out, recovered, discovered, advice, guidance, etc. So that report then applies to you now and forever going forward. So it's a timeless report. And then there's implementation. So you have to be open to this process, and you have to be prepared to take on the advice and guidance and make those changes. And the support comes after a couple of weeks of checking that is happening and making sure you've taken the time to read it and take it on board, because there's no point in doing this unless you're going to do this. It's something you'll have to see through to the end. Well, you don't have to, it's your choice, but you'd want to, if you want to live in a more comfortable way. So what I promise you is, if you come to me, you will be listened to, you will be understood by someone who knows, a female who's been through menopause, appreciated in all your beauty and really seen. I will give you a deep understanding of exactly who you actually are, not perhaps who you think you are or who you've been told you are, but who you actually are. What you will need for your particular balance in wellness. What planetary influences you are susceptible to. So when you hear the astrology information, oh, Mercury's retrograde at the moment, or Jupiter's doing this, or Mars is here, you'll be going, oh, that's what that means to me. Or Uranus, you know, why do I feel like, you know, everything's upside down? Successful and achievable diet and lifestyle guidance. And that's really important, because you don't need any more failures. You only need successes to feel positive going forward. So whatever I set for you has to be something you can do and something you'll want to do. I'm not going to tell you to do a whole load of things you don't want to do. And I will tell you why I'm telling you to do these things, so you will thoroughly understand them. And that helps when there's difficult decisions to be made. We will understand your personal vulnerability and triggers, so you'll be able to manage those going forward and think, oh, okay, this happened again, right, I have to be careful. Or I know that I'm going to sin tonight, so this is how I'm going to mitigate that and balance it out so that I don't feel like trash in a couple of days. Natural ways to overcome and manage your menopause. So you'll have a nice little, as I want to say, arsenal. I'm not sure if that's the right word, but you know, a toolkit. That's a better word, isn't it? Now, why don't you know about services like mine? Well, first of all, aromatherapy was outlawed in the 12th century along with witchcraft. And that is because the church decided that they wanted to commoditize, anyway, make money out of health. And people got put to death if they caught using essential oils for anything other than their pleasing aroma, which is pretty scary, disgusting, and everything else. And it remains, the market does, unregulated. So that means that you can buy a bottle of oil in a shop or in a supermarket, and only 8% of that ingredient needs to be in that bottle for it to be marketed as pure. And therefore, you won't get the same effects. So you may think essential oils don't work for you, and that's because you're not using the right ones or in the right way, because they themselves are extremely potent and strong and powerful, and you need to know what you're doing. Astrology, early Christianity, full of it, but deemed it demonic in the 4th century. It's gone in and out of fashion. It's crazy. I mean, you've got surgeons in the 16th century that had to be able to calculate the position of the moon before they performed surgery or any bleeding, because they knew that on a waxing moon, you would bleed more than you would on a waning moon. So it's easier to remove something on a waning moon and easier to put something in on a waxing moon, if that makes sense. Same with hair removal. And it's knowing these things. In the pharmaceutical industry was started in the 1900s. Sorry, the cat is just going mad again. I can't believe this has happened. In the 1900s by J.D. Rockefeller, and he set it up because he had all these byproducts from oil industry, and he worked with Carnegie from the steel industry and decided if they came together, they could do something with these byproducts and they could make medicine using certain elements of plants, and they would therefore be able to make money from them. And so the pharmaceutical industry was born. And where it really took hold was in the 20s, when they started controlling the content that doctors were being taught in the universities and medical schools. And up until that point, about 50% of doctors were homeopathic and organic, etc. I am going to have to let the cat out. You are particularly annoying. Go on. So there is a place for pharmaceuticals. I'm not anti-pharmaceutical. I just think that in terms of, if you can find a natural way to do things, then that's going to be better, because it's not going to knock out anything else in your body. There's always a price to pay with pharmaceuticals. It will always stop something else working properly. And when you reach this stage in your life, you really want to be firing on as many cylinders as you can possibly muster. Sun astrology is still in the press. You know your sun signs, and I know you've probably thought, well, how can that apply to me? 12 signs for the whole world? I don't think so. Well, the reality is it's not. That's just one element of you. There's lots of different elements, about 14 different planets, like 14 different positions, and meanings, etc., that are kind of taken into consideration. And there's a lot of maths and science in it. It's not general at all. Herbs and traditional folk remedies, people kind of use herbs. They kind of know that things do things. Chamomile tea is calming, things like that. Peppermint is good for digestion. There's kind of a rudimentary knowledge out there. However, in menopause, there's plenty of wild plants growing, which would be hugely beneficial to you, like red clover and things like that. Although if you're blood type O, you shouldn't really have red clover. But anyway, and that's the kind of information I specialize in giving you, is working all that out, which things you easily going to be able to do for quick wins for yourself. Like a cup of nettle tea is extremely beneficial when you're feeling low and you want to pick yourself up, but you wouldn't have that late at night when you possibly are going to have some of your insomnia issues at that time of night. You possibly will want valerian and hops and things like that, and lavender, but you might not like lavender, so what can you use instead? So herbs were really common, again, with witchcraft being banned in the 12th century. People used to know this information. It all went underground or disappeared or was misconstrued. And there's many good reasons for that this is not the time and place to go through. But if you look at the different courses I run courses on things like witchcraft and things on herbs, etc. So I can give you all of that information if you are interested. And then nutrition is fairly new. I mean, I know that in the 80s, people started worrying about eating salt. We've got it going on for sugar at the moment. Some people can eat sugar. It depends where you come from. If you're from the Caribbean, where sugar cane grows naturally, you probably are okay with a bit of unrefined sugar. Whereas if you're from this country, sugar was introduced. It's not something your body is used to. And there's other ways of getting hold of something sweet, which is going to be more beneficial and not knock you out of the park. It's knowing all of this stuff and then looking at the food quality, as I mentioned before. So working out how to get food to really nourish you. And people don't know that. And that's new. And yes, it's a new way of looking at things. Everything I offer is ancient, but new at the same time. Because, for example, with food, it's changed. The manufacturing process, people aren't growing their own stuff so much anymore. Need to get back to it, really. But, do you have the space to do it? Do you have the know-how? All of that. But everything else, like the aromatherapy, the astrology, it's gone on for thousands of years. But hey, you can't make money from it. Once you get people to heal themselves, then they don't really need to keep on buying medicine. So interesting, isn't it? So how can I help you? I can help you if you want to stop experiencing tiredness, hot flushes, weight gain, irritability, dryness, anxiety, depression, or migraines, or any of the above. I can help you if you're ready to change and live. I can help you if you want to find meaning in your existence. I can help you if you want to realign your soul, if you want to develop your spirituality, and if you want to enjoy this final stage of your existence in style and claim your crown. My 6-stage journey is very thorough. It's taking account of every single aspect of you, starting with that health and well-being survey, which going to take you an hour to 2 or 3 hours to complete, me an hour to analyze, and then we'll go through it again in the one-to-one consultation. Your birth and medical chart, which will take me about 3 hours to draw up. Your essential oil analysis, which can take half an hour to 45 minutes. If you're not able to be with me, that's fine. I can do that based on all the information I have above. The personal prescription, which is I write up after we've completed everything else. So you have this 6 to 8 page document, then you put it into practice. I come back to you to check that you've read it, to check you haven't got any questions, and to check you're doing it. And then you decide, I want to see Claire again. I want to follow up. I need to go through what I've been doing and make sure I'm doing the right thing. And we go from there. So if you want to think about taking this further, or if you want to take this further, simply book a free 15-minute consultation with me and discover how I can help you. It's totally free. There's no obligation. You just see, does this fit with you? My service is going to cost £300 for that 360 bespoke wellbeing consultation, because it takes about 6 or 7 hours, maybe more, depending. And it's worth it because it is so in depth and because you will get so much from it. But in order to understand that and really appreciate that, get in touch and let's do the consultation. I really don't mind if you choose it's not for you. It's not going to bother me at all. It'll just be a pleasure to meet you anyway. Those are my contact details. I look forward to hearing from you. Take care.